Gratitude is paramount in all of life. Today, I am joined by a phenomenal guest, Mr. Gratitude himself, Steve Bueller. And I want to invite you to enjoy this conversation on that, where we dig into some of the practices of gratitude. I didn't know the difference between soft gratitude and hard gratitude. So we kind of get into some different elements regarding gratitude and some ways that you can really not have a superficial relationship with gratitude, but have a relationship with gratitude that will really bring a lot of joy and a deeper meaning into your life. Hey guys, welcome back to Ask Me How I Know. I am super excited because today we're talking about a really important topic, and it's not spoken about consistently, I will say. But I am joined today to have this conversation on gratitude with Mr. Gratitude himself. Steve, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Ask Me How I Know.
I'll ask you anything if you know. Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. Yes.
It'll be great. You know, Steve, you've had a lot of experiences that have led to gratitude. And before we get into that, I was thinking when I reached out to you, we met via LinkedIn, and I'm always looking to connect with people that are kind of outside of my normal real estate world, because you can really get stuck in a bubble, and it's really important to expand and to like know other people. It expands your understanding of things. So in the real estate world, there's this whole deal where people are, want to be grateful. They want to cultivate gratitude. And we have these habits. It's like, every morning, did you write out your like 3 gratitudes or something? And it seems really contrived. And I felt like you really take gratitude in a more, you just embrace it in a more meaningful way. And so I want to thank you for that. And I was wondering if you would share, just a little bit about how your journey of gratitude came about.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I mean, you're right. I think some of it might seem contrived, and I do tend to think that I live it out. Not really sure if there was anything in particular about what drove me to the edge, but I think I'm all in. Okay. What drove me to it, or what got me to this point, was going way back to I'll put the second event before the first, if it makes any sense. The second event was when I went out one afternoon with my friends on their motorcycles. I was the only one in the group without a motorcycle, so I was using a borrowed one. I didn't have a license, obviously. And we opened up the throttles, and I was summertime, of course. I'm wearing the helmet, shorts, and a pair of sneakers. And at about 85 miles an hour, I went off the road. And they had told me things, about if you're ever, in a situation, get away from the bike. So I knew I wasn't going to make the curve, and I hit the gravel at the side of the road. There was a ditch to the side, it was all grass, a little embankment up to the right. And I got off into the grass, and I laid the bike down and let it go, which is you're supposed to do. And I started sliding on my lower left leg, and I walked away from it all. I remember, it just happened so fast, but everything boils down to the milliseconds. I saw this fence, the square wire fence, and I was thinking, I'm going to go through that, and I'll get cut up into little tiny pieces, like when in the cartoons when you see them cut into squares.
Oh,
and I wasn't panicking. I would just think I have to just be calm. Anyway, the whole thing went. I slid on my knee, had a little bit of scrape on my knee, and I was standing there, and I was literally just standing, but my body was jumping right off the ground from shock. So my friends came back and they said, "You're very lucky." I said, "I know." And they said, "You have to get back on the bike." So we straightened the bars and all of that, and got back on the bike. They said, you'll never get on one if you don't do it. So that was the first event, and I shook it off. I was, young, and that's what happens. You're immune from all of life's tragedies, right?
How old
So
were you?
in my 20s, yeah.
Yeah,
So
you're still absolutely invincible.
absolutely invincible, and then going to the next one, the third thing was my grandmother passed away a number of years ago. She kept gratitude journals, and that was something new for me. And I was reading through them, and I thought, I'm a very ungrateful person. She would be grateful for being able to open a jar because of her arthritis. What am I grateful for? Um, and I started thinking, I got to write down a list of, and I just, it wasn't part of who I was. Life was just happening. Life, was taken for granted, because face it, our generation, and yours as well, I'm assuming, we always had everything and plenty of it, right? And so it just was. Um, I lived in a small town, and I just thought that that's the way life was. Everything was good and normal. And so I was thinking back when I was reading these gratitude journals to a time that I had been downhill skiing and broke my leg in 4 places. And I was in crutches for 8 months. I hip cast for 3, a knee cast for another 3, and then learning to walk again. So again, you're young and you're invincible, but I thought, that's twice I've been really, really lucky and taking things for granted. And I started to really pay attention to things in my life. And the more I thought about it and researched, I realized that there's one thing that everybody has that's the great equalizer. And if you don't have that, you don't have anything. And that, to me, is your very next breath. Because if you don't have that, that's the end of the game. And I started to pay attention to what keeps us here. And we live on the razor's edge every single day. I mean, if our temperature goes up or down 3 degrees, we're in serious trouble, serious physical trouble, right? 3 degrees, it's not much. You go outside, the sun, goes up and down 15, 20 degrees, okay. But if your body changes 3 degrees, you're in deep, deep trouble. Your very next breath is the only one you're ever going to get. And it's impactful. That's when I started to being grateful for things. I have things called hard gratitude and soft gratitude. Soft gratitude is, oh, that's a beautiful flower. It's a nice bird song, a nice cup of coffee. The hard gratitude is when, your neighbor's house burns down. How do you find gratitude in that? I'm still working on that one, but that's the long answer to your good question.
Oh, I love it. I like the differentiation between soft gratitude and hard gratitude. And I think that's a really that's a moment for everyone to just contemplate, because sometimes, I'll be writing down things that I'm grateful for. And I do have a practice of that, just because I want my brain to always be at the ready to fall back into gratitude, because things happen. And if you fall back into good things like gratitude, your perspective is so much better. And you're able to see the opportunities and difficulty. But that some people will say, oh, you just write down these silly things. But when you express that soft gratitude, that's a really great way to put that. But I like that hard gratitude. Can you speak more to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's impossible to be grateful and not positive. They just go together. Positivity and being grateful are positive things. And so if you're in a positive mindset, you always see the silver lining in the cloud, right? And that's why you can be grateful for things. And often, you say, oh, I lost my job, right? But we tend to label things and identify them with labels. We label everything. And when you stop labeling things as good or bad, and just that they are, you realize that, especially in the case of a job, if you lose your job, people, like you say, I'm, let's say I'm a policeman. Okay. Well, that's a job. It's not the person, right? And so if you lose that, if you're no longer a policeman, you've lost your identity, right? So if you stop labeling things and say, there's a fire, it was tragic, okay, then, or losing a job, it's not tragic. It means, why is this happening? And I'm borrowing this from Dr. Benjamin Hardy. He goes, why is this happening for me?
Yes.
Not to me, but what for me? And I think it's a great way to look, because now you've set yourself up for what else is out there. Because when you're doing a particular job, you have a focus on that thing, and everything else is obliterated. So that's, I think, where the hard gratitude starts to meet with reality, is that you lost your job, and it's a great thing. Here's another example. I know a lady, she's sort of a mentor of mine. She owns a medium-sized business, and one day I heard her talking to one of her employees who had just made a $400,000 mistake, and she put her arm around him. She
Some
said,
change.
she goes, that's fantastic. She goes, what can we learn from this? And that sold me on being grateful, for sure. If nothing else did, that was one thing. It's an opportunity. If you look at things, the good that can come out of something, it just, you tend to not focus. What you focus on, you give strength to, right? And
Right.
the other part of hard gratitude that I have trouble with is, people say, well, how can you be grateful for a genocide? Well, you can't. I'm still working on that one. I think there are things around it that might bring you awareness, and there's small gratitudes and stuff like that. But that's something I'm still dealing with. And I don't know if I've answered your question, but
Yeah.
I'm
Do you,
trying. Yeah.
do you suppose, like with the harder things such as genocide, it could be a gratitude for the people standing against it, the people looking for interventions, and the people that are advocating and stepping in the margin, maybe?
There are always things like that. I think another thing that comes to mind, excuse me, is I worked with immigration for 4 years, and I met people from around the world. We dealt with a particular branch of immigration that dealt with people from hot zones, like countries at war, civil war, whatever. So I met some amazing people, a lot of really fantastic stories. And it made me realize how we take life for granted. Now, you're in the United States, I'm in Canada. I think we're pretty much the same situations in our lives. I've learned that when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I should do is kiss the ground that I'm walking on, because when people come here, they have hit the jackpot. I mean, we don't wake up with war. We don't wake up with volcanoes and wild animals and dangerous things. And I mean, some people do on a daily basis. We don't have that. If that's not enough to be grateful for, I don't know what is.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't really understand people that are grateful that live in those situations. I'm trying, I'm learning, but it's something you pretty much have to experience, I think, to really get a good grasp of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I know. So you were talking about breaths and, being grateful for the next breath. And I've, since my dad dropped dead, and this is now, it'll be 5 years. And since then, I've kind of measured in heartbeats. So it's like, and it's a similar concept of like, just be grateful. Like, at some point it all comes to an end, and be grateful, and use every single one of your heartbeats or your breaths, for something awesome, because you have that, you have the opportunity to do that. You have an opportunity to create this greatness in the world versus, the negativity that sucks people down.
Absolutely. That's precisely it. You've nailed it. And um, I was with my dad when he took his last breath. I mean, it was, we could see it coming. It was fairly rapid, but we did see it coming. And it's really something, to be with somebody, that is it. There's no more. Like when you're alive, you think, oh well, okay, there's always a tomorrow and this and that. But eventually there's no more runway left. And what, I mean, how do you plan for it? You don't know when you're going to go. Some people do, some people don't. But I mean, there's a podcast, I can't even remember the name of it now, but they were talking about these two guys that were medics or people in the ambulance service. And they were telling stories about people they found that had died, and people sitting in their living room chair eating popcorn, and you don't know, right? That's why every moment is so precious.
It wildly precious. So when you think about how people can start, just weaving more gratitude into their lives, what would you say to those people?
Yeah.
How do we nurture and cultivate this?
Just by raising awareness, first of all. You start small, like my grandmother, being grateful for opening a jar. You take it, for me, it would be, well, it's habit forming for one. Okay, so now there's a whole slew of things on how to change habits. James Clear has a nice book on it. Charles Duhigg has a nice book on it.
I love Charles Duhigg's book. As did we listened to it as a family, and my son, I think he was 10 at the time, and he loved it. Can we listen to Duhigg again?
Yeah. Wow, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you can change your habit on recognizing things to be grateful for, and like I said, start small, right? You notice a hummingbird, it's an amazing creature, just one creature in the whole planet, and you can watch that, the way it can flap its wings, the heartbeat inside of that thing, the brain that it has, and it's functioning and it's doing something, and to us it's beauty and it's magnificence. And if you think about the physics involved with it, you think you can be grateful for having the experience of seeing that. And once you start being grateful, you can start accelerating the process. I remember one time I was scuba diving in the ocean, and it was a fairly shallow dive, so I had my full hour of air. And of course, the water was warm. There are many factors that affect your usage of air, and like just going to the bottom and sitting there, I watched one fish for almost an hour, and I thought, this is its daily life, and I'm being part of that. It's calm. All you hear is your air going in and out, bit of motion from the waves, and there are so many things we don't even see, we're not aware of. So start being aware of ways to be grateful. I think that's essentially the starting point, is being aware.
That's really powerful. And I'll attest, I'm not a good, I've been diving one time, and my oxygen use is not efficient underwater.
it will be once you get used to it.
Yeah, that's what I was told. That you'll get your rhythm going, it'll be okay. But there is something about observing, and we share a love of like just nature and everything. And I was watching a skunk. I was mountain biking a couple mornings ago, and there's this skunk, not a big one, but probably a 10-pound skunk, still a little
so
guy.
Cute.
They are so cute. I haven't seen one this size, and I'm not a fan because they eat our chickens. But it's out, I was in its world, and so and it's just bounding down the trail in front of me, and I was waiting for it to move. But it's just such a delight when you stop and you just I mean, I was following it on my mountain bike and just marveling and kind of laughing to myself, thinking like, this little guy's staying on the trail. What's up with this
Mhm.
skunk? But you can find such joy. And I notice there's a correlation between, gratitude. It gives birth in life to so many other elements that bring about good things into our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. No, going. I don't know what to add to that. I don't think there's anything to add. I think if you could match that with the awareness, like you said, and then building the habit, that's, and then keep it going. I mean, I think once it's a habit, it keeps going, but maybe focus on different things, or start with one thing. I've got a part of a little group that have daily gratitude sharing, and the one guy always has a theme, and I suppose that's okay. I tended to do that for a while with my LinkedIn posts, but sometimes now I just go with whatever comes into my mind. But once it's a habit, it's there. Like anything else, and awareness, building the habit. Yeah, but you're right. It brings joy. It's no going back.
Yeah, absolutely. No going back. I love it. Is there anything, I can't believe it's like, we're going to wrap up this segment here in a moment, but is there anything that you would say, beware of as you're building this habit into your life? Are there any, like, it sounds odd because it's such a positive habit, but are there any stumbling blocks that you could see?
Well, yeah, anytime you tend to focus heavily on one thing, you leave out other things,
Mhm.
and so that I've just been really aware of that lately, actually. To be conscious, I call it's conscious gratitude, and so um, you don't you can't let it be at the expense of something else. Like if my wife and I have a fight, I'm grateful for the fight because it means we're communicating. It means that we're solving something. It means there's an issue that needs to be addressed. But don't get caught up in that. Do the dirty work, right? So
That's a
so
really good point.
so you have to look out beyond what's the gratitude bringing to me. Like everything is a gift
Mhm.
in my view. When you wake up in the morning, you're breathing air that Jesus breathed. Um, it's free. Your heartbeat is free. Uh, you name it, and I mean, eventually you could probably figure out a cost somewhere. But in the end, these are gifts. What we do with these gifts are completely up to us. There's no judgment on it, not that I know of. But I'd rather err on the side of caution and be grateful for the gift. I can use it to any which way I want. I can not use it. I remember hearing somebody a number of years ago, they had been diagnosed with MS. And he said, I cannot dishonor the gift by refusing it. I go, wow.
Wow.
Yeah. And to him, that was his way. That was dealt to him in life, and how he was going to play it out was up to him, and not, and so those are things that you think about, and not get caught up in the other stuff that there's more. There's sometimes more than what you're acknowledging. Like for him, it
Mhm.
was receiving a gift. Like for me, it would be, oh my, what am I going to do now, right? And
Mhm.
grateful, but he was grateful beyond uh, my comprehension at the time.
That's remarkable, and that's a way of thinking that is not common. To
No, no.
say to refuse this gift would be a disgrace. That's
Mhm.
really remarkable. Wow. Well, Steve, we are wrapping up the segment. Are there any other gems because you're already dropping these gems and they're
Oh,
beautiful.
thank you.
Is there anything else that you would like to add to this concept?
Well, I could go into the science behind it, but I don't think that's always necessary. You know, some people like to hear the science. You know, how do you measure it? Yeah, what you know, what's the value measurement of it? There are ways to measure gratitude, you know, your results and whatnot. But I think if you're feeling good, you keep doing it. It does release what is oxytocin. It's one of the things that happens when you start feeling gratitude. Your brain is an amazing thing. A lump of porridge, you know, a 3-pound lump of porridge in your head, and look what it can do. You know, if that's nothing to be grateful for, there's nothing. You know, if that's not something to be grateful for, then we got nothing to be grateful for. So your brain and yeah, just, you know, again, like we're able-bodied people, but for the people born without arms and legs or no vision or whatever, they're still happy. You know, some of them are. You know, everybody, you choose happiness, and like I said, I guess happiness is a gift too. So it's what you do with it, what you want to do with it.
Yeah, very, very true. Oh, I love it. How can people get in touch with you? What's the preferred way? They're like, I need to have Mr. Gratitude in my life.
I suppose the best way would be direct messaging me on LinkedIn, connecting. I think my email address would be stevenjbuehler@gmail.com. I do answer my emails. I'm not always right on top of them, but I do answer them.
Right.
Other than that, I have a web page I'm setting up, but I'd rather limit the way I'm accessed, because the more you're out there, the more difficult it is to organize. And I'm not a huge organization. I developed something called Think Thankfully. It's a virtual organization, but you know, I've developed or am developing programs for people to latch onto if they want to. I can, you know, provide consultations. I'm a guide. I'm a servant leader, I suppose. And that'd be the best way. Stephen J. Buehler at gmail.com. Probably the best way. And LinkedIn. Yeah.
LinkedIn is my happy spot. I love LinkedIn. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us and just giving us more insight on cultivating gratitude. It's something that is an endless well that needs to be constantly, you know, we need to draw from that well all the time. It's very necessary.
And that well will never run dry.
Never. To all my awesome listeners out there, please make sure you take time, go learn more, follow. I just want to say, follow Steve, Mr. Gratitude, over on LinkedIn, because you'll just get this constant drip of beautiful, you know, gratitude right there. And until next time, go find your freedom. Thanks so much for joining me for another episode of Ask Me How I Know. This episode was brought to you by 3 Keys Investments. They are dedicated to helping people like you, you, my awesome listeners, develop passive income and legacy wealth through multifamily investing. Feel free to check out their website, 3keysinvestments.com, to see if there is an offering that will help your portfolio grow and meet all of your needs. If you haven't already rated, reviewed, subscribed, liked, all of those bells and whistles, I would be absolutely honored if you would do that for Ask Me How I Know. Thanks again, and go make it a great day.